So today we are going to be working on cheesecake. Cheesecake is part of the category of slow baked custards. So we're going to show you how to make one of those and how to tell when it's done and do some different sizes of it. So I'm going to start with a 3-pound block of cream cheese. This cream cheese has been out of the fridge for a little while so that it's a little bit soft. And I'm going to put this in my mixer, mixer with a paddle attachment. Now, the #1 rule of mixing cheesecake batter is that when you put it on the mixer, never ever take it off low speed, even if you're in a rush, because what that's going to do is it's going to create air bubbles. Okay, let's see if Mr. Grumpy wants to cooperate today. Not yet. There it goes. Okay, so I'm going to mix it on first speed for a little while. The secret to cheesecake is mixing it slow and scraping it often. So that's 3 pounds of cream cheese. This is a small batch for us. You can certainly scale this batch up for a large batch of cream cheese or cheesecake, sorry. If you're going to do this in a large mixer, like an 80-quart mixer, if you're doing a giant batch of cheesecake, then you're going to want to make sure your cream cheese is very soft, and you're going to make sure you have a good scraper. A rubber spatula is fine for a small mixer, but in the larger formats you want to use a plastic bowl scraper, and you want to really get down in there. Alright, so I'm actually going to add 1 1/4 cups of sugar, and this is going to help my cream cheese mix a little bit better because sugar is a liquefier. So anytime you add sugar to a mixture, it's going to liquefy it just a little bit. So the sugar's already incorporated in there, but I'm going to give it a little scrape. There we go. And try to loosen that cream cheese up just a little bit. Okay, good. So that's going to mix for just a little bit, and when it's fully smooth, then we're going to add some more ingredients to it. But while we're waiting for that to smooth, I'm going to move my mise en place here, and I'm going to set up my cheesecake crust. Now, this cheesecake crust has been pre-assembled and pre-mixed. You can mix this in huge batches, and you can just keep it on the shelf for a while. If you're going to keep it for months and months and months, the best course of practice is to put it in the refrigerator because it does contain some butter. And while the graham cracker crumbs and sugar will not go bad, eventually butter will go rancid. So what I have here is a 6-inch cake pan. It is not a springform pan, it is just a cake pan. This can be done in any size cheesecake, and what's going to make the difference in the cheesecake size is just how long it takes to bake. Normally I like to do this batch will make a really nice 10-inch cheesecake, but that takes a couple hours to get through the oven, and I figured this way I can be done my workday a little bit sooner. So I'm taking this mixture and just pressing it into the bottom of the cheesecake pan, or the cake pan, which I'm going to bake my cheesecake in. Now, with this pan, I have lined the bottom with a circle of parchment paper, and I did spray it beforehand. So you want to make sure that you always spray it and put that parchment down the bottom. It'll help you get it out. Okay, so the other thing I'm doing is little individual cheesecakes. These are a 4-ounce foil cup. And I'm not going to do anything to this. I'm just going to go ahead. I did not spray it. There's no parchment. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a layer on there. I don't have a measured amount of crust that I like to put in the bottom of the cheesecake. And the reason for that is I feel like it's up to you. If you like a lot of cheesecake crust, go for it. I like to have a thin layer of cheesecake crust, but not so thin that you don't actually taste it. I think it's a good point to have a little bit of something in there as another layer. Now, your fingers aren't going to be able to get in there too easily to push this down all the way. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It will stick because of the mixture. However, if you have an extra cup, you can just go ahead and push that right down in there and it will make a nice smooth layer. So what I can do is I can start these guys off. Now if you're producing cheesecake every day for a dessert menu, you can create a measurement for this, like 2 tablespoons or a cup for the 6-inch, 2 cups for the 8-inch or whatever, and make notes for yourself. It'll make your life a lot easier in the long run. And if there's more than one person that you're working with that's setting up the cheesecakes, then it'll be easy for them to figure it out also, so you can have a consistent product. All right. Down. Now, cheesecake will freeze well after it's baked. You can't freeze cheesecake batter unbaked. It will separate because the eggs are not stabilized. Okay, now that I've got all my cups filled, I'm going to put them back in the hotel pan here, and I'll set my crust out of the way. Clean up my space here, and in that time, my cheesecake, my cream cheese and sugar mixture has become quite smooth. So that means it's okay to start adding eggs. Now, I've got 3 eggs, 3 whole eggs, and 5 egg yolks. I'm going to let those 3 eggs incorporate, and then I'll add the egg yolks just a couple at a time. Now, if I were going to be doing this in a large batch where you have to add like 20 or 30 eggs or even 24 eggs and a bunch of egg yolks, what's going to happen is you're going to want to stop and scrape after every few. So a lot of scraping is going to happen. Okay, this is getting good and scraped. Now, the thing is, it's very important also, is that once you add the eggs, you don't want to overmix this mixture. So you can turn on the cream cheese and the sugar, walk away, do something else, turn on your ovens, tend to another project, do whatever you got to do. But once you start adding eggs, you really need to be mindful because the eggs will start to break the mixture down. Also, once you add the eggs, that's when it's really, really important that you don't go above first speed. If you go above first speed, what's going to happen is you're going to introduce air into the cheesecake batter. And when you introduce air to the cheesecake batter, what's going to happen is when you put it in the oven, that is going to expand and it's going to make it nice and light and fluffy. And then when you take it out of the oven, it's going to collapse and it's going to make a souffle style cheesecake. Now some people like that, and that's okay. But for a nice, my favorite cheesecake is a medium density, very smooth, not very brown cheesecake. So that's what this recipe is. Now we're just making a vanilla cheesecake today, or a plain cream cheesecake. If you were to make this another flavor, especially a chocolate, you want to add an unsweetened or very dark chocolate because you want to get a really nice dark chocolate flavor. Otherwise, I found the sugar in the mixture and the sweetness that's naturally coming from the cream cheese is going to affect your overall flavor, and it won't get that nice dark chocolatey mix. If you want to add a flavor like caramel or like raspberry or strawberry or an alcohol tends to work really well for flavor, so like amaretto or Irish cream, go ahead and mix it right into your mix. Otherwise, it's going to dilute the flavor. And if you add too much things to a cheesecake batter, it's going to thin it out enough where it's not going to set properly in the oven. So sometimes what I try to do is, if I have a flavor I want to incorporate into my cheesecake, instead of just making it into the cheesecake itself, I'll incorporate it into the plated dessert. So that means I'll make a, if I wanted to do banana, instead of doing banana cheesecake, I would make a banana mousse to go on the side, or a banana cream or something, so that you get a banana experience, but not necessarily in the cheesecake. Okay, so that was vanilla that I just added to my heavy cream. I have a few lumps, but not too many, so that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and add this heavy cream slowly. And I'm going to let it incorporate a little bit at a time. If I were to add too much of the whole thing at once, it wouldn't be too much of a problem, but it may splash around. So you can certainly substitute sour cream here if you prefer. It'll make a thicker batter of cheesecake. It'll make it a little bit tangier tasting, but it'll certainly be fine. I would stay away from using milk or half and half or anything with a lower fat content. You can use yogurt too if you wanted to, but just be aware of your ingredients of your yogurt, that it doesn't have too many other thickeners. A lot of yogurt contains cornstarch, and that will do funky things to your batter. Okay. Good, it's almost done mixing. Okay, so once that's all mixed, then we'll be able to put it in the pans. Okay, at this point, my batter is all mixed. It's nice and smooth. It's got a few lumps, but I'm not worried about it. If this were a chocolate cheesecake or a colored cheesecake where you'd be able to see those lumps, I'd be a little bit more concerned. I'm going to go ahead and fill my little ones. And I like to use a scoop for that. That way it helps me be consistent. Delicious. Okay, those are all filled, and now it's time to fill the 6-inch cheesecake pan. I like a really nice tall cheesecake. So I'm going to fill this up almost all the way, but that's up to you. If you want a shorter cheesecake, by all means, make a shorter one. The taller ones take longer to bake. And there's no need to fuss about spreading it out too much. I like to leave it about a 1/2 inch from the top. Now, if you have extra batter, the extra batter will hold in the fridge for about a week. After that, it starts getting funky. All right, the most important part about a slow bake custard is the water bath. I'm going to go ahead and do the water bath. I want to show you that, so baking in a water bath is putting another pan into your, putting your custard cheesecake into another pan, and we're going to pour some water in so it's about halfway up the sides. You don't want to fill it up too much because then it's going to be tricky to walk from here to the oven. If you have a long way to go to the oven, you're going to want to do this as close to the oven as possible. And this is a hot water, and you want to make sure it's hot water that you pour in here. If you were to try to do this with cold water, it would work eventually, but the problem is that the cold water will the oven will have to work really hard to heat up the cold water to become hot water, and then it'll start baking. So it's going to increase your bake time exponentially if you only use cold water. Okay, I'm going to carry these over to the oven, pop them in, set a timer, and I'll be back to show you when they're done. Okay, so here I am. These small cheesecakes are out of the oven. They are still very, very hot. And the number one question I get asked all the time is, how do you know if it's done? Well, I'm going to show you. See the surface of that? I like to touch it. See how it's springy? Can you tell? See how it's springing back? Okay, that's done. If it wasn't done, what would happen is it would stick to your finger. So if it sticks to your finger, what you're doing is feeling the inner surface of the cheesecake to feel if you can do it. Same happens for custards, creme brulee, caramel, flan. Everything you touch, you want to touch it, and it should feel a little bit springy in there to see if it's set. It should feel set. If your finger's pushing through and it's getting wet, obviously not done. Okay, so as you can see, the big cheesecake is out of the oven. See how it jiggles a little? It's okay, but it feels set in the middle. So I'm going to leave it here and let it sit for a little while, but definitely I will move it to the refrigerator once it cools a little bit so that it doesn't sit out in the danger zone too long. Okay, so now this cheesecake has been in the fridge overnight, and I'm going to turn it out of its pan. So I'm taking my paring knife, and I'm going to cut it along the edges. But you need to make sure that you're not going to scrape the edge of the pan. If you're too overzealous with that, what's going to happen is you are going to actually cut the side of the pan. I'm just going around extra time to make sure I have that crust free. And it's a little bit soft on the sides, which is an indicator of what it's going to be like once I turn it out. Okay, so I have these little middle discs that are really handy, but you can use a cardboard round if that's what you have. Then I have a clean, dry side towel that I'm going to put there. And the reason I use a clean side towel is that when the cheesecake comes out of the pan, it's going to keep the cheesecake from sticking to the metal or to the cardboard, whatever's underneath. This is a blowtorch. I'm going to heat the pan. Now I'm heating the pan because I'm releasing that base. Remember yesterday I put the parchment in the bottom? And I'm tapping it, kind of give it a little whack to try to help it release from the pan, but I'm also tapping it to hear a hollow type sound to know that it's released from the bottom of the pan. Okay, that released pretty well. Take my cardboard round and flip. Okay, now it's out, and then the edges are a little bit rough from where I've cut it out. That's okay, that's normal. If I was putting this cheesecake in a retail case or on display for a buffet, I would have a bowl of graham cracker crumbs, and I would just push some graham cracker crumbs in around the side. For a chocolate cheesecake, I like to use a chocolate cookie crumb like Oreos. Okay, so now we've got the little cheesecakes here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to release this around the sides. And I'm not going to actually put the cloth underneath it because it's just too close to the flame and it may catch on fire. All right, so that's a little cheesecake turned out. If I was doing a lot of these, I would just set them up on a sheet pan. And I'm going to clean up that edge. See, it did stick a little bit because of the way I turned it out. But I'm going to show you another trick in just a second. Okay, so now this is a cheesecake from this batch that I've actually put in the freezer. It would be best if you could freeze this overnight. I'm going to go ahead and torch this thing up. You can actually see the metal moving to know that it's expanding. Help if I release it a little bit. If this was frozen solid, the best thing to do would actually be able to take a pair of scissors and you could possibly cut the edge off and just peel it away. Same thing works really well for a silicone mold also. And once again, we have a lovely little cheesecake. There we go. So if I was doing a plated dessert, you could do them individually, or you could do a large cheesecake and slice it up. Now there is a trick to slicing a cheesecake to make the cuts very clean, and I'll show you that next. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to cut a cheesecake. I use my blowtorch here, which is quite loud. I'm going to use that to heat up my knife. So between the hot cake knife and a nice wet towel, and we have a lovely slice of cheesecake. Good stuff. I love cheesecake.